Welcome to the Cyber Talent Series, where we explore how organizations are closing skills gaps, accelerating onboarding, and building high-performance cybersecurity teams. My name is Phoebe DeVito, and this episode is hosted by Thomas Rogers, co-founder, COO, and president of MetaCTF. In this episode, Thomas connects with Adrian Guevara, CISO and head of IT for TELUS Digital Solutions. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Cyber Talent Series.
Super excited today to have Adrian join us. He's been an advisor. We got to know him kind of as a friend as well. Someone really accomplished in the cybersecurity space. He spent a lot of time there and very accomplished as a leader and a manager as well. So I have a lot of interesting questions to go in down that road. But yeah, first off, Adrian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
First off, would just love to hear a little bit more about your background, what you do today, how you got there.
Man, that sounds like a loaded question, right? You can go on for hours with that one. So myself, Adrian Guevara, I'm CISO and head of IT for TELUS Digital Solutions, a division of TELUS Digital. So I work within a larger group. Previously, we were Willow Tree, a development agency out of Charlottesville, Virginia. And, my career has taken some unexpected turns to get me here, like most. I have a background in electronical engineering, working in clean rooms, and I did none of that after college. It just wasn't interesting for me. So what I ended up doing is I got on with a friend of mine's father who ran a small MSP out of here in Orlando, Florida, and kind of worked my way up the ranks there. And then over the years, I ended up getting hired away by a client, which is a no-no, but happens to everybody. I ended up changing to security because of HIPAA. I was in a room when the HIPAA laws and regulations came down, and I was working for a large medical practice at the time. And they just looked around the room and they needed to appoint somebody as a security officer per the HIPAA guidelines to be responsible for that. And they just pointed to me. And I swear to you, that's how my security career started in early 2000s. Kind of been working my way up ever since.
That's awesome. It's funny because I feel like you and I have had a number of conversations and I feel like I know people, and I didn't know that's how you got into it. So it's so interesting. I guess once you did get into cybersecurity, what kept you there?
Breaking things. Like that is pretty much what kept me excited. And the fact that it kept changing so fast was something that kept me on my toes a lot. And I like that kind of Rubik's Cube, trying to figure things out. Whether it is impossible ask or not, I'm still going to try to do it. I might be wasting my time in some cases, but you got to have that kind of passion to kind of jump into this kind of industry that things move so rapidly. And now with AI.
Yeah, I guess with your current role, I know we've talked a little bit about this. So Willow Tree being acquired very successfully a couple years ago, talked a bit about what that transition's been like. TELUS being like a massive international company, just from a leadership perspective, management perspective, what's it been like managing teams and because you read the headlines, but then you're the one who has to manage the people on the front line. So what's that been like?
I always say that the technical part of my job is the easiest. The people part of my job has always been the hardest, right? It is always challenging because in this particular instance with acquisitions, you're managing emotions as well as, managing the people in the day-to-day work. You're managing not only the emotions of your team, but the teams that you are integrating with or working with, from the acquiree, right? Hope I said that right. So yeah, that is definitely one of the biggest challenges for me has been managing the people with this particular types of scenarios.
Is there anything you can think of like earlier in your career that has kind of prepared you for this stage? I'm sure you as like a former, individual contributor, one of the things we talk about a lot here is like there's specific decision points that people have in their career. I think on the engineering side in particular, one of the most difficult and ones that people really labor over is moving from IC to manager. Is that something I really want to do? Can you think of like early career points that have helped you in things you do even today?
Yeah. So early in my career, when I was making that transition from hands-on contributor to manager, I can't say I did that great, my first couple swings at it because I wanted to dig into the technical too much. And I kept getting bogged down in that until I had a mentor pull me aside and kind of show me a way to see the forest from the trees, identify the forest from the trees, right? To see a little bit more strategic, to see a little bit farther out there. And I've had some pretty good bosses and mentors to kind of help me along that way to where I'm at now. And now my duty is to do the same thing for others who are dabbling their toes in with leading, even if they're still individual contributors. The best way you can dabble your toes into that is like putting your hands up for some of these more complicated projects and leading some of those projects. you're still doing it as an individual contributor, but you're getting a little taste of what it's like to manage people, deadlines, and all the other variables, some of which you can control and some of which you can't. And it was going into that rinse and repeat a couple of times is kind of where I found my footing. And I did find my footing here at Willow Tree about 10 years ago, much more than I had previously, because one of the things that I had to change over my career is I was in industries that were regulated. And so I can say, you got to do this because federal mandate says X, Y, and Z. That's easy. Now, go to an unregulated industry like software development for just general purpose software development. Now it's less of telling folks what they need to do and convincing them of why they need to do it. And that really made a big shift in my approach to management and my approach to work day to day and my approach to relationship with everyone around me, even if I don't speak to them every day. I saw it as, if I'm meeting somebody in the hallway or walking by someone in the hallway, that is an opportunity to build some sort of relationship with that person, because eventually some policy or something that you say or make is going to affect that person in the long run. And so taking those opportunities, going to team lunches and meeting in the hallway, or just saying hi, just dropping down while they're playing video games on the couch, which is something software developers do, by the way. Dropping down and asking questions and learning some of their day-to-day is an opportunity to take that to build a relationship with somebody.
So I want to double click on something you said at the start of that. And there's a lot in there that was really, really interesting. But on the topic of mentorship, so finding mentors and then you yourself now being a mentor, was that something, early in your career you sought out, or was it something that kind of came organically? And then now you in the other seat, are you seeking out people to mentor? Do you kind of let it happen organically, or do you let them come to you? How does that work?
So it was a little bit of both, seeking it out, right? Early in my career, I did sought that out. I did not receive that the way that I thought I would. Different times, right? And so at first it was a little bit organic. And then as you've made those relationships with some of the folks in the industries or even in your workplace, then I was able to get under somebody's wing. But it took some time to get there. Now, as the roles have reversed, one, I never stopped seeking mentorship. I still talk to other folks who are CISOs that are colleagues of mine, and I'm asking them, how are you handling some of these situations that we are handling today? Because it is going to be constantly changing. The workforce is changing. And so as a manager, I still seek some sort of mentorship. And these are with relationships that I have built over the course of, 20, 25 years. But on the flip side, as I see folks who could use it, I am reaching out to them and offering, because I want to make that path a little bit easier for them than it was for me.
What are some things that you do that you felt like you could have, really benefited from early in your career? And then I guess one thing that I like to do, both as a mentor and mentee, is kind of define the relationship. Hey, this is what I'm hoping to, not in a transactional way. It's I want to build a relationship with you, but at the same time, you're just kind of put on the table. These are some of my goals. These are some ways that I envision sort of working with you as a professional mentor. How do you make sure it's worth your while, worth the other person's while? I know those things can change over time.
I rely a little bit more on relationships than a structured approach. However, I have been involved in structured mentorship and structured being a mentee. And that sometimes it can feel very transactional. And so why I try to learn about the person, their kids, their family, and build a relationship and offer a piece of myself is because it doesn't feel it starts to feel like what we're doing right now, a conversation, and we're throwing out scenarios. And before you know it, you're having a plain conversation with someone, and it ends up being an hour and a half long. Harder to do these days, with other execs, but you'll get it oh man, I gotta go. It's time to go be with my family, or it's time to go to this other meeting, because you start to dive into these topics and get really deep, really fast, because you've done pre-work ahead of time. The structured method did help me understand what the boundaries are in most of these scenarios, when to reach, when to not, or maybe reach out to somebody else so you're not banging on the same person over and over. And that also was a relationship thing of where those boundaries end and begin, it all boils down to relationships.
So how does that differ when you're the manager? So that implies some level of structure.
Yes.
And you have some responsibility. In some cases, maybe you're the person who hired them. So you kind of put yourself on the line by maybe you took a chance on them or whatever the case is. So yeah, how does that change the way that you help a person grow professionally, personally, when you're their manager?
That's a great call out. Like the difference between mentoring a manager or somebody in your company versus mentoring somebody out, right? And there are two different, definitely boundaries there. Internally, yes, there are other boundaries. If they report to you, there are other boundaries you have to respect, mostly defined by HR, how you don't get yourself into any kind of trouble there. But yeah, there are two things that I tell my folks when I hire them. And I hope that I have stuck to this over the years. I'm sure that I'm not perfect like anybody else is. If you're coming to work for me, I will do my best. My pledge to you is to get you ready for your next position, whether that's with me or with somebody else. And if it's with somebody else, I'll be the first to open the door for you and give you like a graceful red carpet out and leave the door unlocked, especially if you've done your part. In return, and this is where the agreement happens, is in return, you're going to help me move some of the agendas that I have from a security perspective and a culture perspective. You're going to help me move that forward. And I'll do those things for you, right? I'll make sure that you're educated. I'll make sure that you get your questions answered. I'll make sure that I mentor you as far as getting you promoted. We have strict rubrics. And so how do we work within those rubrics to get somebody to the next level? I will call out specifically in our one-on-ones what I think you can work on. But I also think you should tell me what I could work on too. And so when you start to build that trust, there's another relationship thing. You start to build that trust between the manager and the managee, then that relationship starts to blossom in the sense of how you can get somebody, to the next level. Now, I hope that, like I said, this is working for me, and I hope that I've been able to follow through on it. But I have many folks who work for me in the past that I still have regular communications with over, hey, Adrian, I'm dealing with this. How do I approach this situation? Or have you heard about this? And they're giving me advice on some of this stuff. Like it's a two-way street.
That's awesome. So you talked about rubrics with those people when you're managing, there's all kinds of frameworks around like performance management and, the HR side of things. What have you seen that works well from a measurement perspective? Because you're presumably managing a lot of engineers, whether security or developers. So in terms of like figuring out, does this person have the technical skills needed to progress to the next level? How do you think about quantifying, measuring that?
Man, that's a tough one, right? It depends on the skill set you're looking for and how quickly you need them to move. And it all boils down to, are they meeting the need or the expectation that you set forth? If they are, but they're just meeting it and nothing extra is happening, that's when you open up that conversation like, yo, you're crushing it. However, I think you can do more and kind of let's see where the boundaries are. So then we can get you, I need you to be X, Y, and here, and be very clear. I need you to be here to get you there. I need you to be X so I can give you Y, right? And a lot of that is contingent on HR and budget and a bunch of other stuff, but I'm giving it my best shot and trying to be as clear as possible. So that's kind of how I approach that. It could be, as we are having these situations and dealing with new situations with AI, are you leveraging the tools that you have? It's not necessarily the skill set, but are you leveraging the tools that you have to get the job done? May not be get the job done faster, but it's still about quality, right? Can you get the job done? And are we having to come back to this job? And that tells me a little bit of where your skill set is and where your ability to pick up new things is.
So I love that you started with defining what the rubric is, because I think that's the step that's often missed. It's like people try and jump to judgment and measurement and quantify, but it's like, if you don't know what you want or what you need, then how can you measure the person's performance against that? So defining being this first step. I do think that's tough. Is there anything you've learned throughout the years about how to define creating a good rubric for people development or evaluation?
So yeah, the biggest thing that I learned is a rubric is not, so let's just throw out a cybersecurity engineer at company X, and there's a cybersecurity engineer at company Y. The rubric is not universal, right? It is going to be tailored, and that's the key word, tailored to the specific job function in the role, the company that you're working in, because culture's different, priorities are different, and the rubric has to be aligned with the priorities of the company. Because if it's not, I'm going to have you going down another path, but the rubric says you need to go down this path, but the company's priorities are this path. We're going to come to some sort of headway at the end of the year over and over again, where you're expecting either merit or a promotion. And I'm telling you, well, you didn't achieve X, Y, and Z, but I didn't give them an opportunity to achieve X, Y, and Z. And so that's on me too.
So how do you give them the opportunity? Is it all work-related stuff? Is it taking on projects that are maybe outside of their day-to-day scope of work that maybe is like that next level up? Because I'd say one thing that we see with our customers is interweaving some sort of like external skill development, exercise or activity can be a good way to supplement that. It's not everything, because it's not always like entirely custom to what their day-to-day job is. But yeah, how do you blend, whatever it is that you're trying to do?
So we do have in the rubric things such as that training, achievement, side influence into your growth, because you cannot grow internal 100%. You're going to hit a plateau, and then you need to pull from outside resources to learn and diversify your knowledge. Now, that includes situations like what you talked about in learning and training, but it also includes giving back, in my opinion. And we're a big believer of that. There's no better way to solidify knowledge that you have than teaching others about that knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost a weird repetitiveness that solidifies it more with you, but you're also giving it to somebody else. So you're always, in my opinion, you're helping others. You're helping yourself too when you help others, in this sense. In Charlottesville, we have volunteer work that we do with teenagers in tech and women in tech, and especially the teens. If you can get them early, then that's great. And trying to diversify the workforce and then bring it back to you in the sense of, now I'm reinforcing the stuff that I've learned by teaching it, and also letting them know, like, hey, here's where I made mistakes. I just don't I think that's a really good feeling to walk away with personally.
I think the thing that does, and I think that's brilliant, is it also, the thing that you don't think about at first is it shows that person cares. And that's like, it's kind of a binary metric to measure, like, do they care or not? We see that in like candidate assessments in the hiring process too. Like, we've seen some companies that'll, send out these assessments during the interview process. And some people will you can't tell that much by someone who doesn't spend that much time in it, because they could be busy. There's a lot of different reasons why not. But there's some people who might spend hours and hours and hours. What that says is you can figure out, do they have the skills? But what it says is they care. They want this. And I do feel like including that as a part of the rubric as hey, do some external stuff. Here's some ideas. That shows those people really care. They get passionate about it.
I've definitely had a couple of situations where, and this is part of giving back, I've had some interviews that were pretty rough, right? Where somebody probably shouldn't have applied for the job that I'm interviewing them for. And instead of cutting it off right there, I kind of let them do their thing. And at the end of the interview, I'll try to give them some really pointed feedback as where they can be better here for the next interview that they walk into. It may not be with me, at that point, but I still feel like I'm leading a piece here for them to take with them, and that it was a learning experience for them and not a judgmental or embarrassing experience for them. Because God, I hate those situations myself the other way around.
Yeah, that's always so tough. But yeah, anyway, that's really interesting. I love hearing your perspective on that. I do want to shift gears a little bit. So getting back into AI, something I've been thinking about a lot lately has just been, because I know you have very talented teams at the companies you've worked at, and thinking about the skills required for an individual contributor to do their job. You do think about kind of general security and IT skills, even for developers, not just, for builders, not just, the security engineering department. You think about the tech stack too, because I'm sure you need people that can do the things with the tools and platforms and technologies that you use too. What I'm curious to get your perspective on is what does AI adoption do to that? How does that sort of impact the way you evaluate the technical skills you need? Is it just the same for everyone? Because I've seen in the news, there's companies that have the mandate, you got to use AI tools and be default AI for solving problems. But yeah, curious what you've seen with that.
there's two big things that I see that we as cybersecurity professionals can take advantage of. One, closing the gap, because we have had such a talent deficit for the last 10 years, right? For the last 10 years I've been in the industry, it was like, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough people. And we have this big deficit. What was the last quoted stat? 250,000 or something like that?
In the US, it's way more.
In the US alone.
Global's
right?
millions. Yeah. Well, that's what they say, at least.
And with the rise of some of these privacy regulations and or others, that's just going to make that gap bigger because they're going to need more people in there. Now, what AI I see allows us use properly can bring people up to speed faster. So for instance, you have a tech stack, it works a certain way, and that tech stack could be 40 or 50 different services and operating systems across your infrastructure, and they communicate a certain way. Now, you can give an AI context like that. Then as the alerts come in, you can train folks where to go check things first, where to go look for things, how to pull up certain logs. I've never touched CrowdStrike. I came from a SentinelOne shop. So it knows I use CrowdStrike. It knows how we use it. Hey, go here, go to this step, configure this. And so it can get people up to speed faster. You do that a couple of times, especially for the analysts. They're going to know it in the back of their head pretty quick, right? Where they don't have to like mess with the AI or they'll know where to start. Now, on the other sense, if you are bringing in folks with little security background or experience, straight out of college, or switching industries from IT heavy to security, or in my case, a lot of times I've taken developers and changed them over to AppSec engineers. So they already have that foundational knowledge. But now I'm like getting them up to speed on cybersecurity, in the world of cybersecurity, or whether it's AppSec, whether it's machine engineering and incident follow-up or incident response or things of that nature. One of the things that we're doing is we're taking these alerts, we're running them through AI with all that context I told you, and it's giving us step-by-step of here's what the problem is, or here's how to fix it, or here's how to troubleshoot it, or even here's how to investigate it, right? And we're getting people trained up faster, especially with a global workforce, and you can't be everywhere all the time. This is another tool to help. The thing you need to be careful about with the AI first, which I'm a big proponent of, is making sure that it doesn't become a crutch, right? Making sure that you are questioning or understanding or even doing follow-up research yourself on the answers it's giving you over time to build some trust in it, or you'll start to know like, hey, that's not right, what it's telling me to do. It wants me to run RM space what? So you'll start to understand that stuff yourself. But I think that is a huge opportunity for us with the alert nonsense that we get on a day-to-day basis and trying to step through that or even attack some of that in a systematic way.
Do you think that all this stuff is going to kind of like calm down? Because like we're in a phase of like rapid AI adoption, and a lot of teams have adopted it in some ways. I'm sure there's some advanced use cases, but there's still a lot of basic stuff. Like you mentioned, being more productive and helping you make recommendations about things to do. I'm sure that's going to get more advanced, but once the AI adoption sort of like levels out, because I would assume at a certain point, like we're going to have adopted at least some of the AI and the AI will evolve as well. But yeah, how do you think that's going to change? And do you see like, are you on the side of like AI is going to like replace a ton of humans, or it's just going to, create new things for humans to do?
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know that answer. Because every time you see like this flash of brilliance from AI, you're like, oh, that was like a dumb move, right?
Right. So, yeah.
Like the next prompt, right? The next answers. I honestly cannot tell you, but it'll definitely help do things a lot faster. So another instance that we're doing that is a little bit more advanced is as we take some of these application security alerts with CVEs in them, we can then quickly prove whether that's real or not. I can have the AI kind of help me build something, a prototype something, an MVP, whatever, to quickly test and that's real. And for us, the non-wasted time of trying to fix something that's not real in billable hours for us is a real value. And you times that several times a week, several times a month across the globe. That is a significant time savings and money savings for but not only us, but our client that we are building something for. Because now we can deliver to them faster and cheaper if we deliver to them faster on a billable rate.
Right. That's great.
But to answer your other question about, where things are going to go, will it settle? I don't see it settling for quite some time because AI is moving very fast and its capabilities are changing very fast. And so you almost got to like reacclimate yourself every few weeks to what the tool can do. which is annoying, but it's also that fascinating brilliance that you see. And I'm sure others have heard this statement before. Your adversaries are using it. And so they're getting faster at the things that they can turn around. And so you have to get faster with the things you turn around. And so, maybe it's just small agentic things, and then it's larger agentic task, and then it's fully agentic task, and, with some sort of human in the loop there. I honestly don't know. I see this headed down the path of we're relying more on it because of the rapidness of the adversary, who will rely more on it as well. Chicken or the egg?
So now I think thinking about your background, it seems like you're in a really good position to effectively manage that transition and the adoption on the AI side, just because, for a lot of reasons, but one being that you were in like highly regulated industries and moved into more like software development organization that is more focused on building, shipping, software, maybe in like less regulated industries. So
our customers regulate us.
Well, there you go. But yeah, I guess managing the security side of an organization like that, who, like, I'm sure there's pressure, and there has been pressure to move fast for your customers. How do you manage that from the security side?
That is definitely a fine line that I've had to learn here. Security not only has to worry about security, they have to worry about velocity, and they have to worry about retention. And with skilled developers, retention for years was such a big deal because they were hard to get. And they still are hard to get, in my opinion, skilled, qualified folks. And so retention has always been at the top of my list and priorities. It's like, hey, yes, I got to secure this, but how do I do this without getting into way too much of velocity or the experience of the individual? This is where the unregulated industries are quote unquote unregulated, because we're still regulated by customers. This is where they have a little bit more freedom to do some of those things and be a little bit more goal oriented versus prescriptive in their implementation of some of the stuff. And I understand as you get bigger, that's much harder to do. The larger you get, it is harder to be more goal oriented, and you want to be more prescriptive. Your natural tendency is to go there because of the amount of people and repetitiveness that you are dealing with.
That's really interesting. I feel like your job at Willow Tree is probably closer to like a big tech company that's like shipping product, all the time. And I can't even imagine how many different applications you all are shipping and updating constantly. So I'm sure your job is as tough as anybody's on the security side.
That's why I love it, man. That's why I love it. Keeps me on my toes.
With that transition, we talked about your transition from like IC to manager. Now you're an executive. Like, what's that transition been like for you? And then how does that impact the way that you manage people kind of on a, managing manager level?
You still have a team that would report to you directly, whether it's middle management or that kind of scenario, or it depends how big your company is. That's going to kind of dictate that. So you still are going to be mentoring folks, and you're still in that dive. How do you arm them with the tools to do the same thing down the line? So now I'm worried about like the skip levels and down the line. Like, how do I train or work with and give feedback to individuals who report to me directly so they can have the same training or have the same attitude down the line, and so on and so forth? Because that's how a culture is built. The culture is built two ways. It's built from the top, and it's built from the bottoms up, right? If you have one that kind of meets in the middle, I think that's a very sweet spot to be in. And in some cases, it's very aspirational, all right? But it's a very sweet spot to be in. And that's going to make this transition for you a lot easier. Now, never mind, as an executive, you got to deal with budgets and strategy and call earnings. And so that's that whole other side to it, that when I first got an executive position like this, I went to a mentor of mine to like, hey, how do I prepare for this? How do I address the board? How do I address the CEO? Like, what do they care about? And so I'm still, like I said, you're always in this path.
That's awesome. Cool to hear. So we have a final wrap-up question that I'll ask, but appreciate you being here. It's been really fun just chatting with you and learning more about the way you think about things and your background. The last question we wrap up with is, if you were to start your career over now, what's something you wish you knew, or something maybe you'd tell younger Adrian as you were getting started in your career?
This is going to sound cliche, but I would say, relax. It's going to come to you. Just keep doing what you're doing. There's a lot of things that you would do different. I guess one of those things was not be so worried about climbing in kind of like living the moment. Like that's going to come to you. Hard work pays off. Good work pays off. People notice. One of the things that brought me to WillowTree was one of the founders of WillowTree I worked with in a previous job as a contractor for them, not even as like their employee or working for them. And that's how, he called me over and asked me to kind of apply for this. And I was apprehensive at first, but I trusted him and had that relationship that I said, what do I got to lose? And it's been one of the best things for me. So just take it easy, slow down. It's going to come to you. In the meantime, learn as much as you can learn.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks, Adrian.
Alrighty. Glad to be here.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Cyber Talent Series. If you enjoyed the combo, make sure to subscribe on Spotify. Also follow us on YouTube and subscribe there. We'll be sharing content there as well. For ongoing tips on hiring, retaining, upskilling your cyber workforce, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn and check us out at metactf.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.